All right. I am pleased to welcome David Kelly, the Executive Vice President and Executive Director at the Elearning Guild, here to talk with us about subscription learning and tools. Thank you so much for being here.
No, thanks so much for inviting me.
Awesome. Well, I think maybe we start off by kind of defining what subscription is. I think most people understand it now, but when we're saying subscription, we're just talking about paying paying for something and having it like a monthly fee or annual fee and having access to it versus a perpetual license where you pay for it once. Is that generally how you would define a subscription versus a perpetual license?
Yeah, for the most part, I think that's a definition of what it is. I think what could be interesting is to explore a little bit about why it is and why this model has emerged. Because a lot of people that I've spoken with about the fact that they're using a tool and it's gone to a subscription model, they always react in terms of how it's impacted them and whether it's positive or negative for them, but they don't necessarily see that what's going on in our industry as it relates to shifts towards subscription models is going on in the world in general. It's going on in the software world, and it dates. I mean, we use a phrase in our industry of off-the-shelf training, which it goes back to the date that literally when you needed to buy software, you would take a physical item off of a shelf to buy. And that's how we distributed software at that point. And that's where the model of buying software, even though we're kind of used to it today, where if I need to buy something and I'm buying a perpetual license, I'm downloading that software. It's still kind of the same sort of thing where you're buying a set software. But with the cloud emerging and more things becoming cloud-based, this idea of software as a service has become very commonplace. We use things like Google Drive and all of these network things that are just commonplace. It's the natural progression for how software should be distributed and how software should be accessed. And there are a lot of benefits not only to the providers who go in this direction, but also to the people who are consuming them, which I think is something that needs to be looked at and understood as you start going in this direction with things that you're using as a consumer, and if you're in the vendor space, if you're considering making that switch.
So within the learning space, what all are we talking about? Who are you seeing that's switching over, or where you've seen some shift towards subscriptions? Is it an LMS? Seems like something that's been around for a long time, where there had been an implementation cost up front, but even 10 years ago, people were paying for subscriptions. But now we have authoring tools that have shifted over there. We've had content. What else for the vendors that you see at the various guild conferences? Who have you seen kind of shifting over to, or what categories have been shifting over to subscription?
So as a simple way to answer that is everything. Just about everything. I mean, any new tool that is coming out right now, it's very rare that I see something new that comes out that's not a subscription-based model. It's not realistic. I think Gartner had some studies that I was looking at in advance of our chat that said, like, by 2020, 80% of all software will be subscription-based model. It's just the natural way that software is evolving to be distributed. And there's a number of reasons for that. It makes it a lot easier, not only for budgeting purposes, both from the consumer and from the vendor standpoint, to plan for what I'm either going to book as revenue as a vendor or what I'm going to spend as a consumer. But it also makes the maintenance of that thing a lot easier. And then it's not that long ago when I was working in organizations that the challenge of even within a department of this person's on this version of the software and that person's on that version of the software, and the file formats don't necessarily match up accordingly, that goes away when everyone is using the same subscription. So there are a lot of benefits to going in this direction. And in terms of who's doing it, everybody. I mean, the LMSs have been doing it for decades, really, and to a certain degree. And the authoring tools are starting to do it as well. And as much as there is any time that there is a change, it disrupts the status quo. No one's ever fully comfortable with the change. Most people that I've spoken to who had that moment of challenge around the change, when they found out that the tool that they're using is going towards a subscription model, in the long run, they're actually happy with that decision.
Yeah, so you talked a little bit about the benefits for the vendor with stabilizing revenue and projecting things. Let's talk about some of the benefits for the user as well. What should people be expecting the benefits are when they sign up for a subscription-based learning product?
Sure. So one of the benefits just mirrors what the vendors have, and that's in the budget area. I mean, I know when I was a training director in my previous life, when I had a team of people who were using different software, there was always that moment of decision. Oh, there's a new version out, and do we want to buy it or not? And that moment of, well, we already paid for this, and we can still do everything that we did. Are the new bells and whistles that are out there going to warrant a purchasing decision? And I know in my case that we were not buying software every single year. So it was a challenge from a budgetary perspective of, well, you didn't spend that last year. Why do you need to spend it this year? And with a subscription-based model, that kind of goes away. You now have, this is what my budget is for the software that my people need to use on an annual basis. In addition, it makes it much easier to make sure that you're always up to date. You're not worrying about having an old version of the software that's not going to be compatible somewhere else. Everybody's using the same thing, so it makes it a lot easier to make sure that you're always on the current version when you're getting a subscription model. I mean, it's really not that much different than when you download an app on your phone and there's an update. It just get a pop up that says download the new version, and you're in. And you're already as a subscriber have that stuff available to you. The other thing I like about the subscription-based models, because it's all part of this shift towards cloud-based solutions, is that it makes it a lot easier for your team to collaborate in that environment, rather than working within a siloed state just on my desktop and having to send files to one another. The ability for us to collaborate with each other and to crowdsource different projects makes it a lot easier. I mean, some of the stuff that I'm seeing, especially in the authoring tool environment, that enable us to do that is I wish I had that when I was still working in the banking environment where I was managing training teams there.
Yeah, totally. The reviewing an authored course was a very, very difficult thing,
Yeah.
with different people trying to give feedback on different slides, and it was a nightmare. The shift with some of that stuff has been great. Now, in talking about the benefits, drawbacks, there's always some initial pushback. What is the user? What's the potential drawback for a user of the subscription model?
Well, sometimes you have issues with subscription models, especially when you're dealing with a tight budget. I mean, there are tools that I bought when I was working for organizations that had limited budget, that I would buy a tool and I would literally budget it out over 3 or 4 year span. That I was going to buy this once, and I could take that whatever it was, $2,000, and say, you know what, it's only $500 a year, because I'm not going to upgrade this until it's another 2 or 3 versions down the road. And with a subscription-based model, you can't do that. You have your set price, and you can anticipate that, which is great. But it's not like you're buying it and then you can just amortize that price over a certain period of time, however long you plan on using it. That's what your annual price is going to be, and you just budget for it. And that is a constraint of the subscription model. But I think the benefits of that far outweigh the drawbacks of it, assuming you can afford to include that in your budget every single year.
Yeah, I do hear some people with lumpy budgets where they're on a software that they purchased that's like 8 years old, or like 4 versions ago, and they had the budget back then and they don't have that now. But I think
Exactly.
I think if the company offering the subscription can kind of offer that price I've seen software that was hugely expensive now gone down to $20 to $30 a month sort of deal.
Well, that's the other aspect of it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of times with the subscription model, you're taking something that a lot of people just can't afford because they can't crack that nut of the big ticket.
Yep.
There's something that on a monthly basis or on an annual basis, depending on how you want to do it, it's more flexible. It's more accommodating in that regard. And the other thing that I like about the subscription model is it enables you, when I was buying the software before, it was kind of like you bought this, and if you wanted this option, you could buy it, and that was it. With a subscription-based model, usually it's bundled in a way that you have different layers of access, that you can choose to use the tool at a level that fits your budget based on the functionality that's there through different levels. Not every subscription model does that, but a lot of them do now, where I can't afford everything that you got, but you're giving the customer an option where they can get a stripped down version of it to accommodate just what they need and pay for just what they need, which is really, really accommodating to a lot of people.
Yeah. Now, do you think that e-learning is going to follow that trend that you were talking about before of getting to 80% of all software? Do you think that is e-learning going to be in a similar on a similar trajectory with?
I can't see how it won't be. I mean, there will always be outliers that do something different, but The reality is that not being in that model. I mean, think about it right now. If you were going to buy a piece of software for me and I said no problem, and then in the mail you got a CD-ROM that I here's you install it, that's going to be really, really annoying to you. And I think we're going in a direction where if you, like when I'm going to use a service, I mean, there's almost an expectation now that if I'm going to sign up for a service, that I'm going to give you my login information, and I give you my credit card, and I'm going to start using it. Like, because it's all cloud-based, I just log in and I get my tutorial and I start using it. The idea of having to do a download and an installation is going to be something that is going to, even though we were doing that not uncommonly 5 years ago, in very quick order, it's going to become something that almost looks bad for your business because I can't believe you're still doing it this way.
Yeah.
So I don't, there's so many benefits to doing it, and there's such a normalization around a subscription model that I don't see how it's going to be possible to not be doing that as we go forward.
Yeah, I think about, so when I launched my business, it was all pay as you go, buy a single character pack of images, and I did that for the first 2 or 3 years. And some people love that. And my average order price was much higher. But my move to subscription from a business owner was trying to make everything a little bit smoother and able to project out revenue. But also on the customer side, I know I was able to, for what you would pay for 2 character packs, you could get for less than that, you would get an annual subscription where you'd have access to the entire library. So when I look at subscription, it's about trying to provide as much like ridiculous value as you can for somebody to make that worthwhile, and to continue to offer them new stuff. It put a lot of pressure on me as a vendor all of a sudden too, to release new stuff. So new characters rolling out every week, so that people feel like they're still getting value from their subscriptions. You guys also are running a subscription business, right? You have multiple business models at Build, right? So
yeah, I mean, professional development communities like us, at their core, are a subscription model. I mean, we have free membership that gets you access to a lot of different stuff, but then there are subscription models that you can join to get access to more premium content and higher levels of content, be it our face-to-face conferences, our online events, or other stuff. And you have to make sure that you're delivering a value on that as the provider of that. Otherwise, as much as you don't have to go through a formal sales cycle every single year, and you don't have come buy the newest version of it, because you don't have to convince someone to do that most subscription services are set up for auto renewal unless you decide you don't want to renew. You still have to keep that customer happy. It becomes less a case of a new sale at that point, and more about, if I'm continuing to deliver the value for you as a customer, you will renew. And that's not something that's always the easiest thing to do for a vendor.
Yeah.
Especially in environments like the ones that you and I are describing, where a software provider, generally there's an expectation that you're going to continue to iterate and you're going to continue to put out new versions of it. That's kind of the model there. When you're subscribing to other types of services, it's just, part of it is, are you going to continue to be happy with what we have? But part of it is continuing to innovate and add additional value to keep not only the customers that you have happy, but to invite new customers to join.
Yeah, totally. I mean, when you guys by the time you've launched one conference or event, you're already having to think about the next one, right? It's not a one-off deal. You need to figure out, all right, I just delivered value. What have you done for me lately? So you guys are cranking out new stuff all the time.
I had a meeting just earlier today. We have a conference that's taking place next week, and the meeting that we had today talked about, all right, everyone's set up for next week. All right, let's talk about the conference we're doing in June, the online event that we're going to do in May, and the conference we're doing in October. And that was an hour's worth of discussion to make sure that everything that we have that's moving is in place for that.
Yeah. Now, all right. That's funny how it works that way. Same thing. By the time I've published a set of images, I'm already planning out the next photo shoot. For a practical tip, somebody who this one falls out of the norm of the trends. A lot of them were easy, practical steps. What's the practical tip for somebody to implement subscription-based tools or learning in their program? You're talking about value. Is that what it is? Is it evaluating where they find the most value and go with something like that first? What would you recommend?
It always comes down to value, whether you're a vendor or you're a customer. So if I was going to be a vendor and I was thinking of making this switch, what's going to be the ultimate value for it? And again, for many of them, it comes down to it's a lot easier to project revenue. It's a lot easier to maintain your product in that environment. So that it's kind of an easy win there. From a consumer standpoint, I almost look at it, forget about e-learning for a second, and just look at it from the standpoint of how life works in subscription services. I mean, you and I, before we started recording, we were talking about Netflix as a simple example
Yeah.
of what a subscription model looks like. And Netflix is pretty cheap. It's under $10 a month for most people. And when you look at that, you go, well, it's not that much money, but what am I going to get out of it? And yeah, there might be a season of House of Cards or whatever that you want to watch, but what about beyond that? And maybe that's the value that's good enough. Maybe spending $10 so that I could watch 6 seasons of a show that I've been curious about, and then I take my subscription away. It's great. Or maybe it's something that I'm liking the fact that I'm going to have this library of stuff that I can watch rather than going to, download something from iTunes or something at $3 a pop. I have this huge library of thousands of things that I can watch for the price of $7 a month. And it gives people the option to decide what the value is. What that Netflix example can extend to any subscription service you're looking at. You look at what the portfolio is, think about how you would consume it, and then you can make the decision as to whether or not that's enough value for you.
Great. Yeah. And I think my recommendation coming out of this will be somebody who wants to get started is to look at the Guild and other trade associations. I mean, there are the free levels that people can start on a subscription basis. It's a free subscription where you're getting a lot of value. And then also to look at some of the paid versions as well. So I think that's probably the article that I'll outline out of this is go dip your toes in at one of these trade associations, get going on it, and see how much value there is at the free level, and look at the paid levels too. But I think you guys are delivering a ton of value, and it's a worthwhile. Yeah, sure. It's a worthwhile thing for everyone in the industry to be a member at some level, and to ramp it up as they can. Netflix is a good example. Seems like everything's subscription, even in our personal lives. Dollar Shave Club, right? Subscription razors, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't end. Cool. Well, for people that are wanting to learn more about you and learn more about the guilds, I'm going to put some links in the show notes as well. But
Sure.
but tell us where the best places to find you are, and where the best place to get more information on the guild is too, please.
Oh, absolutely. So anything you want to learn about the guild, you can find out on our website, elearningguild.com. You can reach out to me directly at dkelly, that's just Kelly, at elearningguild.com, where I'm always available on Twitter at LNDDave. Those are probably the primary ways that you can reach out to me, as well as any other of the social networks that are out there that I'm probably a part of.
Great. All right. Well, I'll follow up with an email too. If there's any other links that you want to provide, I'll put them in there. But really appreciate your time talking about subscription learning. It was one of the top trends predicted for 2018. So it's good to both discuss it with you and also talk about maybe something actionable that people can do with joining these associations and taking a look at value as well.
Excellent. Well, it's my pleasure to be part of this. Thanks for inviting me.
And thanks so much. You take care.
You too.